A Course in Miracles, Lesson 170. There is no cruelty in God and none in me. And yet, how deeply we have believed otherwise. Look closely at the image before us. A great stone idol, worn and weathered, cracked down its core. It stands tall in a desolate landscape, half in shadow, half bathed in gold. At first glance, it looks powerful. It looks eternal. It looks like a god. But look again. Its surface is chipped. Its lips are smeared with blood. Its fire comes not from strength, but from a fracture, from a split within. This image is not just art. It is autobiography. It is the mind on defense. The mind that made cruelty sacred and fear divine. This idol is what we worship when we think attack protects us. This is what we build when we believe we are safer by being cruel. And though it looks terrifying, flames licking through its core, casting long shadows across the battlefield of our thoughts, it cannot move. It cannot strike. It cannot save, because it is made of stone. And stone cannot love. We created it in our fear and called it justice. We kissed its feet with blame and crowned it with vengeance. We thought it would fight for us, but it only turned us against ourselves. This idol is the embodiment of the false self, the persona we wear to hide from love. But today, we stop bowing. Today we stand before it not as subjects, but as witnesses to its powerlessness. We do not smash it in anger. We do not curse it in shame. We simply see it for what it is, a symbol of the belief that cruelty can save. And in seeing it clearly, its power dissolves. We do not fight the idol. We watch it crack. And from the very fracture that once seemed to burn with vengeance, a new light rises, gentle, holy, patient, and true. The light was never the fire. The light is our release. This is the backdrop of our lesson. This is the altar of unlearning. And this cracked stone idol standing in silence is no longer our God. We will walk through these paragraphs with that image in our hearts. And as we do, the cracks will widen. And what we called cruelty will be seen for what it never was. No one attacks without intent to hurt. This can have no exception. When you think that you attack in self-defense, you mean that to be cruel is protection. You are safe because of cruelty. You mean that you believe to hurt another brings you freedom. And you mean that to attack is to exchange the state in which you are for something better, safer, more secure from dangerous invasion and from fear. No one attacks without intent to hurt. This is the first crack in the idol, right down the center. It does not matter whether the blow is struck with a fist or a phrase or a silence that withholds love. If you're attacking, you're aiming to wound. This can have no exception. And cruelty does not become less cruel when dressed up as protection. When you think you attack in self-defense, you have first imagined a self that can be attacked. A self made of glass, of stories, of skin and pride. And to protect this made-up self, you forge a weapon and call it wise. But the Course lifts the mask. To be cruel is not to be strong. It is only to be afraid. You think you're safer if you get the first swing in, emotionally, spiritually, relationally. But this is the twisted logic of fear, not the clarity of love. You believe you are safe because of cruelty. Like the stone idol, cold, cracked, unmoving, you stand rigid, thinking the fire inside will protect you. But that fire is only your belief in separation. You think to hurt another brings you freedom, but freedom cannot be forged in chains. The one who strikes the blow becomes the warden. And in trying to punish the prisoner, you find yourself behind every locked door. To attack is to exchange your current state, not for healing, not for peace, but for another layer of armor. Another false sense of safety that never really arrives. You trade eternal peace for a temporary guardrail built from fear. You seek shelter in a dungeon you dug yourself, fearing an invasion that never comes. And the idol, smeared with blood and glowing from within, stands not because of power, but because you still bow to it in thought. But the thought is all it ever was. Cruelty is not a force. It is a persona, a mask you put on to hide from love and call it bravery. And today we begin to take it off. How thoroughly insane is the idea that to defend from fear is to attack. For here is fear begot and fed with blood to make it grow and swell and rage. And thus is fear protected, not escaped. Today we learn a lesson which can save you more delay and needless misery than you can possibly imagine. It is this. You make what you defend against, and by your own defense against it, is it real and inescapable. Lay down your arms, and only then do you perceive it false. How thoroughly insane is the idea that to defend from fear is to attack. But that's exactly what the ego tells us to do. If you're afraid of being cheated on, you get controlling. If you're afraid of being judged, you talk louder than everyone else. If you're afraid of being abandoned, you become distant first, just in case. And you call that self-protection. But really you're striking first. For here is fear begot and fed with blood, to make it grow and swell and rage. Think of the friend who cancels on you last minute again. Instead of asking why, you cut them off with a passive-aggressive text. The fear of being unimportant becomes a sword. Or the woman in the office who's terrified of not being taken seriously. So she belittles every idea in the meeting that isn't hers. Fear fed with blood. And thus is fear protected, not escaped. You built a cage to keep it in, and then forgot you're the one who locked the door. Every defense becomes a shrine to the very thing you say you want gone. Today we learn a lesson that can save you more delay and needless misery than you can possibly imagine. Delay in what? Delay in peace. Delay in rest. Delay in softening your jaw at night. Delay in looking someone in the eye without your shield up. Delay in remembering you're already safe. It is this. You make what you defend against. Let's be clear. You weren't abandoned until you expected to be. You started interpreting every pause in a text as proof, every quiet moment in a relationship as a threat. You pulled away to protect yourself and called it wisdom. And now you're alone, and you call that reality. You weren't judged until you walked in the room already braced for it, already rehearsing your explanations, already proving something no one asked you to prove. And now every interaction feels hostile, not because it is, but because your defense made it so. And by your own defense against it, is it real and inescapable? You think you're stopping the storm, but you're carrying the cloud with you wherever you go. You think you're putting out the fire, but you're the one holding the torch. Lay down your arms, let your shoulders drop. Let the clapback remain unsent. Let the story of what they meant die unspoken. And only then do you perceive it false. The idol cannot speak. The fire was only your projection. You were never in danger, but you were believing in a god of cruelty and calling it survival. Today we remember, nothing you defend can save you, and nothing you surrender can truly be lost. It seems to be the enemy without that you attack. Yet your defense sets up an enemy within, an alien thought at war with you, depriving you of peace, splitting your mind into two camps which seem wholly irreconcilable. For love now has an enemy, an opposite, and fear, the alien, now needs your defense against the threat of what you really are. It seems to be the enemy without that you attack. The co-worker who outshines you. The sibling who always gets the praise. The friend who didn't text back. The stranger who cuts you off in traffic. They look like the threat, but that's not where the war is. Because every time you defend yourself against them, you unknowingly set up an enemy within, an alien thought, a foreigner in your own home, a squatter in your mind, whispering that love is dangerous and safety is separation. And now, your own peace feels suspect. Now your heart becomes divided. You love, but you're scared of how much. You trust, but only on a leash. You give, but only in fragments. And so your mind splits into two camps which seem wholly irreconcilable. One voice says, "Open your hands." The other says, "Cover your face." One voice says, "They love you." The other says, "They'll leave you." One voice says, "Rest." The other says, "Defend." Love now has an enemy, not a real enemy, a made-up one. A cartoon villain scribbled by fear on top of your most sacred feelings. And fear, the alien, now needs your defense against the threat of what you really are. You think fear is protecting you from the world, but it's actually shielding you from yourself, from your power, from your light, from the wild, undivided love that would ruin every egoic justification for why you're still guarded. It's like a cuckoo bird laying its eggs in the reed warbler's nest. The reed warbler raises the cuckoo like it's its own, never questioning the stranger it protects. And that's what fear does. It plants itself in your mind, wears the face of wisdom, and asks you to betray your nature. It says, "Don't trust them." But what it means is, don't trust yourself. It says, "Stay safe." But what it means is, stay small. And all the while the idol stands behind you, split and glowing, not attacking, just echoing your belief that love is unsafe. But today we begin to question that echo. We begin to see the cuckoo for what it is, an alien thought, a houseguest fear invited, and it's time to change the locks. Let's keep going, mighty companions. If you consider carefully the means by which your fancied self-defense proceeds on its imagined way, you will perceive the premises on which the idea stands. First, it is obvious ideas must leave their source, for it is you who make attack and must have first conceived of it. Yet you attack outside yourself and separate your mind from him who is to be attacked. With perfect faith, the split you made is real. Yes, mighty companion. Paragraph 4 is where the illusion tries to make itself logical. This is the ego's courtroom, and it's laying out its entire legal defense. But the judge, the witness, and the accused are all the same person. This is the paragraph where the course says plainly, "You made it all up, and now you're arguing with yourself." If you consider carefully the means by which your fancied self-defense proceeds on its imagined way, you'll start to see the insanity hiding in plain sight. You're not being attacked. You're imagining that you might be. And based on that, you launch a war. Let's say your friend didn't respond to your message, so you imagine they're mad, or bored, or pulling away. You don't ask. You assume. And now you're in defense mode, cold, distant, maybe even passive-aggressive. But they were just tired. They were doing laundry. They were living their life. And yet your imagined threat became a real reaction. This is how the idol gets fed. You will perceive the premises on which the idea stands. First, it assumes ideas must leave their source, that you can think something, and it's not about you, that you can feel fear, and it's because of someone else. But ideas don't leave their source. If it's in your mind, it came from you. You make attack, and must have first conceived of it. You're the one who imagined the rejection. You're the one who projected the betrayal. You're the one who scripted the offense before it ever happened. And the universe says, you first. You struck first, because you thought second. Now here's the ego's magic trick. You attack outside yourself. You put the shadow on your sister. You paint the fear on your brother. You separate your mind from him who is to be attacked. You say, they hurt me, but really you thought I am hurtable. So you made them the container for what you didn't want to carry. You hand them the guilt, and now it lives on their face. And with perfect faith, you believe the split you made is real. You believe in a separate will, a second mind, an adversary, another who can betray you, take from you, threaten you. You believe that another will exists besides God. You think there's love, and then there's this. You think God forgot to lock one back door, and fear slipped in through the basement. You believe in an incomplete creator, a distracted parent, a leaky heaven. But fear is not an outside force. Attack is not a weapon you dodge. It is a boomerang you throw and forget you threw. The blow you feel was launched from your own mind. And that cracked idol, it was built from all the shadows you cast on others, that were always yours. But the good news is this: if you made it, you can unmake it. Next are the attributes of love bestowed upon its enemy. For fear becomes your safety and protector of your peace, to which you turn for solace and escape from doubts about your strength, and hope of rest in dreamless quiet. And as love is shorn of what belongs to it, and it alone, love is endowed with attributes of fear. For love would ask you lay down all defense as merely foolish, and your arms indeed would crumble into dust, for such they are. Paragraph 5 is where the great exchange gets exposed, where we see how the mind has taken love off the throne and put fear in its place, wrapped it in soft lighting, called it wisdom, and knelt before it asking for safety. But fear is not a savior, and love does not demand sacrifice. This is the paragraph where the idol tries to look like God, but you start noticing it's wearing a mask, a plastic smile over trembling rage. It says it's protecting you, but it's the very thing that made you feel unsafe. Next are the attributes of love bestowed upon its enemy. The mind does not just believe in fear, it rebrands it. It slaps the label of love on what is actually panic. It says, control is care. It says, jealousy is passion. It says, silence is peace. And so fear becomes your safety. You don't just tolerate it, you trust it. The fear of being hurt becomes the reason you never tell the truth. The fear of being left becomes the reason you don't get too close. The fear of failing becomes the reason you don't try. And in your mind, this fear is your friend, your protector, your inner guard dog standing between you and pain. But it's not protecting your peace, it's replacing it. Fear becomes the protector of your peace to which you turn for solace. When your heart races before a hard conversation, you cancel it and call it wisdom. When your partner gets too close, you pick a fight and call it honesty. When you feel insecure, you retreat into isolation and call it self-care. But fear is not peace. Fear is a cocoon made of glass. You see out, but you cannot breathe. You turn to it for comfort, but it never holds you. And you escape from doubts about your strength by building a story where you're weak. You tell yourself you're not ready. You say, they wouldn't understand. You say, this is just who I am. And all of that becomes a lullaby, a dreamless quiet. But love does not lull you into sleep. Love wakes you up. And as love is shorn of what belongs to it, and it alone, love is now wearing fear's clothes. You've dressed it in anxiety. You've shaved it down to sacrifice. You've called love a task, a risk, a labor. But love has no conditions, no punishment clause in fine print. Love doesn't ask for blood to prove your worth. Fear does. Love would ask you to lay down all defense as merely foolish. Love doesn't want your armor, it wants your openness. Love doesn't need you to prove anything. It already sees everything. Love says, "Put the toy sword down, child. You are safe." And your arms indeed would crumble into dust, because they were never steel. They were never fire. They were made of memory and fear and cardboard. You stood guard with weapons made of shadows, thinking they were forged in flame. But love exposes what you're holding. And when light touches it, your arms turn to dust, and there's nothing left to defend. Because there was never anything to protect yourself from. With love as enemy, must cruelty become a god. And gods demand that those who worship them obey their dictates and refuse to question them. Harsh punishment is meted out relentlessly to those who ask if the demands are sensible or even sane. It is their enemies who are unreasonable and insane, while they are always merciful and just. Paragraph 6 isn't whispering anymore, it's indicting the idol directly. This is where the course stops being poetic and calls it out. You've made cruelty your god and you're worshipping it. Not in theory, not metaphorically, but in prisons, in politics, in parenting, in personal relationships, in the way we kneel to punishment and mock forgiveness as weakness. This is 2025. And yes, we still put people to death. We still believe that vengeance restores order. We still call cruelty justice and say that love is naive. With love as enemy, must cruelty become a god? If love is unsafe, then harshness must be holy. If softness is suspect, then the hard edge becomes your altar. Look around. Look how quickly the world labels gentleness as weak. Look how often forgiveness is mocked as foolish. Look how often mercy is dismissed as naivete. If you believe love will betray you, then you will choose punishment first. Because cruelty feels safer than being let down. If love is the enemy, you will make cruelty the gatekeeper of your peace. And gods, these false gods of cruelty, demand that those who worship them obey their dictates. What are their dictates? Cut them off before they leave you. Raise your voice before they question you. Hide your feelings before they're used against you. Date only if you have the upper hand. Parent with guilt. Lead with shame. Never let them see your tenderness. Never say, "I need you." Never say, "I was wrong." Fear doesn't ask you. Fear dictates. It lays down rules like prison bars. No crying, no softness, no second chances. And you follow these rules, not because they free you, but because you fear what happens if you break them. And if you dare to question these demands, harsh punishment is meted out relentlessly, not just from the world, but from your own mind. You beat yourself up for crying. You regret telling the truth. You punish yourself for not being tough enough. You silence your own joy because someone once told you, "That's too much." You become your own enforcer, your own warden, your own punisher. And anyone who doesn't follow the rules, anyone who dares to love freely, forgive openly, trust again, they become the enemy. It is their enemies who are unreasonable and insane. She's too trusting. He's too emotional. They're too forgiving, too soft, too slow to retaliate, too fast to bless. And all the while, the ones who worship cruelty believe they are merciful and just. They believe they are holding the world together. They believe their rage is righteous. They believe their rules are keeping everyone safe. They think God is pleased with their wrath. But the idol is just glowing stone. Blood on its lips, yes, but it cannot think. It only mirrors what you believe about protection. And if love cannot be trusted, then only pain can keep you alive. But today we name that insanity for what it is. We stop pretending that cruelty is noble. We stop believing that punishment is peace. We stop pointing at the world and saying they're dangerous, and start seeing that the danger lives only in the belief that love must be earned and defended against. Today we look upon this cruel God dispassionately, and we note that though his lips are smeared with blood and fire seems to flame from him, he is but made of stone. He can do nothing. We need not defy his power. He has none. And those who see in him their safety have no guardian, no strength to call upon in danger, and no mighty warrior to fight for them. Paragraph 7 is the unveiling. This is the moment we stop screaming at the statue and realize it never moved, it never spoke, it never saved. This is the moment the courtroom goes silent. The great idol is exposed not by attack, but by stillness. We look upon it dispassionately, without fear, without fire, without fascination. And we finally see, it was always just a rock. Today we look upon this cruel God dispassionately. No more awe, no more trembling at the base of its altar, no more tears spilled over something that never loved you. We look without fear, without fascination, and we note that though his lips are smeared with blood, it is not his blood, it is ours. The sacrifices we made to please him, the relationships we ruined in his name, the joy we silenced just to stay in his good graces. And fire seems to flame from him. Yes, seems to. But this is smoke and mirrors. The threat was never real. The punishment never came from beyond your own belief. Because he is but made of stone, unthinking, unmoving, unloving, he can do nothing, no miracles, no safety, no peace, only the illusion of control. We need not defy his power. That would only make him seem real, make it a battle. But there is no war. He has none, no power, no voice and no will. And those who see in him their safety have no guardian. They're guarding themselves with a cardboard shield in a rainstorm. They're hiding behind statues and calling them sentinels. They're setting up scarecrows at the gates of their hearts and calling that security. But there is no strength to call upon in danger. Only echoes, only projections, only the dull silence of a mind defending a God who cannot respond. No mighty warrior to fight for them, no holy protector, just the image of fear, forged in memory and guilt, standing still while you fight your own shadow. You are out there, sword in hand, battling a ghost you made in childhood, arguing with a punishment you invented, kneeling before a God that was carved by your own unworthiness. But now we look dispassionately. We do not rage. We do not curse. We simply stop believing. And the crack in the idol begins to widen. This moment can be terrible, but it can also be the time of your release from abject slavery. You make a choice, standing before this idol, seeing him exactly as he is. Will you restore to love what you have sought to wrest from it and lay before this mindless piece of stone? Or will you make another idol to replace it? For the God of cruelty takes many forms. Another can be found. This is where the cracked idol stares you in the face, no longer roaring, no longer mysterious, just silent and heavy and fake. And this moment, it can feel terrible. Because when you realize the God you've worshipped, the voice you obeyed, the rules you lived by, the judgments you projected were all your own shadow, that realization can shatter your heart or set it free. This is not just slavery, it's abject slavery. Slavery with no chains but your own belief. Slavery where the master is a thought and the cage is made of perception. This moment can be terrible. It can feel like your whole identity is cracking. Because it is. The self you built to survive is standing before a God that never existed. And all your sacrifices, all your rage, all your rules are stacked like offerings before a hollow statue. But it can also be the time of your release from abject slavery. Not just limitation, slavery. Slavery to what people think. Slavery to trauma you rehearsed into personality. Slavery to fear that kept you from saying, "I love you." Slavery to the belief that being cold is safer than being kind. This is abject, utter, degrading dependence on the God of fear. And now you stand in front of it. You make a choice. You do, not the course, not your parents, not your ex. You make a choice. Standing before this idol, seeing him exactly as he is. Not with drama, not with screaming, just with eyes wide open. He has no voice. He has no heart. He is made of your refusal to trust. Will you restore to love what you have sought to wrest from it? And lay before this mindless piece of stone. Can you hand back the laughter you denied yourself? Can you return the gentleness you withdrew from others? Can you give back to love the open hand you turned into a fist? The cracked stone is waiting. The idol you thought would save you is already splitting. And now comes the real temptation. Will you make another idol to replace it? Will you call it self-care, but use it to hide? Will you call it truth, but use it to judge? Will you call it boundaries, but build another wall? Because the God of cruelty takes many forms. It can be sarcasm disguised as humor, control disguised as protection, bitterness disguised as wisdom, ambition disguised as value, a tight jaw, a locked phone, a grudge passed down like an heirloom. Another can be found. Oh yes, another always can. Until you say no more. Until you say, "I want the truth instead." Until you stop trying to upgrade your idol. And finally let it go. Yet do not think that fear is the escape from fear. Let us remember what the text has stressed about the obstacles to peace. The final one, the hardest to believe, is nothing, and a seeming obstacle with the appearance of a solid block, impenetrable, fearful and beyond surmounting, is the fear of God himself. Here is the basic premise which enthrones the thought of fear as God. For fear is loved by those who worship it, and love appears to be invested now with cruelty. Paragraph 9 is where the idol tries to make peace with the prison, where the ego whispers, "Fear is your friend. Fear keeps you safe. Fear is wisdom." And we believe it, because the final obstacle to peace is not pain, not conflict, not even death. It is the fear of God himself. Not God as love, but the projection we've made of him, the final idol, the ultimate reversal. A God who would destroy you for dreaming. Yet do you think that fear is the escape from fear? How many times have you thought, if I can just control this, I'll feel safe? If I just don't get too close, I won't get hurt. If I worry enough, maybe nothing bad will happen. That is worship, not of God, but of fear. Fear becomes your compass, your counselor, your God. And let us remember what the text has stressed about the obstacles to peace. There are many: guilt, anger, pain, control. But the final one, the one so subtle it hides in holiness, is the fear of God himself. The hardest to believe is nothing. A seeming obstacle with the appearance of a solid block, impenetrable, fearful, and beyond surmounting. It is the idea that if you ever truly return to God, he'd strike you down. Because you sinned. Because you left. Because you messed up. Because you dared to dream of a world without him. So you worship fear instead. Because fear is familiar. Fear lets you stay hidden. Fear never asks you to surrender. It just asks you to submit. And that feels easier than looking into the face of love. Here is the basic premise which enthrones the thought of fear as God. The belief that God is angry, that he's keeping score, that he's waiting for you to be perfect, that he's sending hurricanes and heartbreak to teach you a lesson. This is not God. This is ego in a robe. And fear is loved by those who worship it. Yes, loved. Because fear tells you who the enemy is. Fear gives you a script. Fear keeps you from having to risk trust again. Fear tells you what's coming, so you won't be surprised this time. Fear says, stay alert, stay guarded, stay small. Fear says, God is watching and he is not pleased. And so love appears to be invested now with cruelty. Love becomes the thing that hurts you, the person who left you, the vulnerability that got mocked, the open heart that got crushed. And now, when love calls, you flinch. When peace arrives, you question it. When God whispers, you are safe. You look for the catch. This is what fear has done. It has painted love with blood. It has made the sunlight look suspicious. It has taken the voice of freedom and made it sound like judgment. But the idol is cracking, the fire is fading, and the stone is only stone. Where does the totally insane belief in gods of vengeance come from? Love has not confused its attributes with those of fear. Yet must the worshippers of fear perceive their own confusion in fear's enemy, its cruelty as now a part of love. And what becomes more fearful than the heart of love itself? The blood appears to be upon his lips. The fire comes from him. And he is terrible above all else, cruel beyond conception, striking down all who acknowledge him to be their God. Paragraph 10 is where we finally uncover the lie at the center of the temple. This is the paragraph where the ego confesses, without meaning to, that it has dressed up cruelty in a robe of light and called it God. This is where we see why so many people turn away from religion, from trust, from faith itself. Not because they've rejected God, but because they've been told God rejected them first. A God who demands blood. A God who sends hurricanes to teach lessons. A God who lets children suffer because of mystery. A God who says, worship me or I'll destroy you. This is not God. This is vengeance wearing a halo. This is the cracked idol's final disguise. Where does the totally insane belief in gods of vengeance come from? From the ego. From the mind that couldn't believe love was real without conditions. So it made a God with conditions. A God who blesses some and damns others. A God who's always watching, not to guide you, but to catch you slipping. But love has not confused its attributes with those of fear. God didn't suddenly forget himself. God doesn't wake up moody. God doesn't have good days and bad days. God doesn't hold grudges. That's your fear, projected upward. Yet must the worshippers of fear perceive their own confusion in fear's enemy. Love becomes the threat. Peace becomes suspicious. Stillness becomes boring. Kindness becomes a manipulation. And cruelty, well, cruelty becomes tough love. Its cruelty is now a part of love. You were abused and someone said, I'm doing this because I love you. You were shamed in church and they said God demands it. You were punished harshly and it was called discipline. So now you flinch when love enters the room. Because in your mind, love comes with a switch in its hand. And what becomes more fearful than the heart of love itself? You want to trust again, but you brace. You want to pray, but you tremble. You want to open your heart, but you hear, what if I'm punished for being this vulnerable? The blood appears to be upon his lips. Not because it's true, but because you've projected the blood of your guilt onto him, The fire comes from him. Not because God sends pain, but because fear told you he would. And he is terrible above all else. That's what the ego whispers. God is the scariest one of all. He sees what you did. He remembers every thought you never voiced. He will strike you down the moment you return. Cruel beyond conception. The kind of cruelty that waits until you feel safe, then punishes you for relaxing. Striking down all who acknowledge him to be their God. Can you see the madness? The God who is supposedly love becomes your greatest fear. So you reject him to stay safe. But you're only rejecting the idol you made, not the love that made you. This is the ego's final strategy. Confuse God with itself, and you'll never trust again. But today the confusion ends. The blood was never his. The fire was never real. And the face of love has no vengeance. The choice you make today is certain. For you look for the last time upon this bit of carven stone you made, and call it God no longer. You have reached this place before, but you have chosen that this cruel God remain with you in still another form. And so the fear of God returned with you. This time you leave it there. And you return to a new world, unburdened by its weight, beheld not in its sightless eyes, but in the vision that your choice restored to you. Paragraph 11 is the threshold scene. You are standing at the cracked altar with the blood still drying, the statue still glowing from within, and for the first time, you're not afraid. You're not bargaining. You're not asking for a lesser God in a prettier robe. This is the paragraph of no more substitutions. No more trading fear for fear in fancier fonts. No more making gods out of approval, performance, hustle, heartbreak, parenting, spiritual pride, health routines, trauma identities. This time, you leave it. The choice you make today is certain. It is not about mood. It is not about motivation. It is not about emotion. It is about clarity. For you look for the last time upon this bit of carven stone you made, and call it God no longer. You stop pretending it's holy. You stop calling your panic intuition. You stop calling your silence strength. You stop calling your control order. You see the idol clearly, and that's enough. You have reached this place before. You've been here. At the edge of surrender. At the foot of the cracked statue. Tears in your eyes, forgiveness on your lips. But you chose to keep the cruel God. Not this one, but another. You swapped out rage for resentment. You traded punishment for pride. You left the idol, but took the doctrine. And so the fear of God returned with you, because the God you rejected was just one form. And you kept the guilt. You kept the story. You kept the shadow. This time, you leave it there. No carry-on idols. No travel-size cruelty. No backup plans in case love isn't enough. And you return to a new world, unburdened by its weight. Why is it heavy? Because lies are heavy. Because shame is heavy. Because living on alert is exhausting. You walked through life like a soldier behind enemy lines, but there was no enemy. And the idol you carried was just stone, beheld not in his sightless eyes, eyes that project but do not see, eyes that condemn but do not recognize, eyes that mistake shadows for shapes and guilt for truth. But in the vision that your choice restored to you, vision doesn't project, it receives. Vision doesn't compare, it remembers. And your choice restored it. Not because you earned it, but because you stopped defending against it. You laid down your arms and picked up your sight. And for the first time you see not what the world made, but what God created. Now do your eyes belong to Christ, and he looks through them. Now your voice belongs to God and echoes His. And now your heart remains at peace forever. You have chosen Him in place of idols, and your attributes given by your Creator are restored to you at last. The call for God is heard and answered. Now has fear made way for love, as God Himself replaces cruelty. Paragraph 12 is not a metaphor anymore, it's a rival. It's the return of the real self, the end of pretending, the moment you stop talking like a spiritual being and start living like one. This is where the false gods fall off the stage. And Christ steps in, not as a judge but as a shared presence. Not a figure in history, but the light behind your eyes, the voice in your voice, the peace in your chest when you say, I don't have to fight anymore. Let's make this visible. Let's show what it looks like in real life when your eyes, voice and heart no longer belong to fear, but to love itself. Now do your eyes belong to Christ, and He looks through them. So what does that look like? In traffic, when someone cuts you off, and you bless them instead of curse them. When your child makes a mistake, and you see innocence instead of rebellion. When your partner forgets something important, and you respond with patience, not punishment. That's Christ vision. That's what it means when your eyes belong to Him. Now your voice belongs to God, and echoes His. You used to gossip, now you pray. You used to defend, now you comfort. You used to explain yourself to death. Now your yes is yes, your no is no, and both are wrapped in peace. You speak and healing happens, not because you're holy, but because your voice no longer carries fear. And now your heart remains at peace forever. It doesn't mean nothing ever rattles you. It means the rattle no longer owns you. It means you don't wake up with dread clenching your chest. It means you can sit in stillness and not need a screen, a snack or a scroll. It means you stop walking into rooms bracing for attack. It means you're no longer looking for a fight or fleeing from one. You have chosen Him in place of idols. You used to worship being right. You used to worship being liked. You used to worship being in control. You used to bow to pain like it was a prophet. But now, you've chosen the Christ within. And your attributes given by your Creator are restored to you at last. What are those attributes? Innocence, stillness, joy that doesn't need a reason, forgiveness without calculation, a knowing that nothing real can be threatened and nothing unreal exists. The call for God is heard and answered, not because you shouted loud enough, but because you finally stopped drowning it out. Now has fear made way for love. It's pulled over, engine cold, 4 flats, parked permanently in the rearview mirror, and God Himself replaces cruelty. No substitute, no metaphor, no middleman. God is not an idea now. He's the road beneath your feet. He's the breath in your lungs. He's the laughter you didn't think you'd ever feel again.
The idol is dust, and love is driving. Father, we are like you. No cruelty abides in us, for there is none in you. Your peace is ours. And we bless the world with what we have received from you alone. We choose again and make our choice for all our brothers, knowing they are one with us. We bring them your salvation as we have received it now. And we give thanks for them who render us complete. In them we see your glory, and in them we find our peace. Holy are we because your holiness has set us free. And we give thanks. Amen. Paragraph 13. The crescendo, the benediction, the homecoming. We started with a cracked idol and a mistaken God. We walked through shadows, fire, vengeance, and fear. And now here, no more bargaining. No more substitutes. Just a simple truth. We are like you. That's the real miracle. Not that we crawl back to God, but that we remember we never left. not in truth, not in essence, not in identity. Father, God, love, life. We are like you, not becoming, not evolving. We are. No cruelty abides in us, not because we fixed ourselves, but because it was never real. There is none in you. And what is not in the source cannot be in the extension. Your peace is ours, not a copy, not a version, not a portion. Ours. And we bless the world with what we have received from you alone, not from books, not from gurus, not from pain, but from you, directly. We choose again, and make our choice for all our brothers, all of them. The ones who left us, the ones who betrayed us, the ones we don't understand, the ones still bowing to their idols. We choose for them too, knowing they are one with us, not similar, not adjacent. One. We bring them your salvation as we have received it now. Not a theology, not a strategy, but a felt remembering that there is no separation. We bring them your innocence, your gift of forgiving, your love, your connection, your unity, your wholeness, your unconditional nature that makes no demands and asks no price. And we give thanks for them, who render us complete. Who are they? They are our mirror. They are the puzzle pieces we once cursed and now cherish. They are the ones we thought we had to forgive, only to realize they showed us who we really are. In them we see your glory. Not in temples, not in flames, but in faces, in children, in strangers, in the hard conversations we stopped avoiding. In them we find your peace, because we share it. Holy are we because your holiness has set us free, not our willpower, not our progress, not our striving. Your holiness, your remembrance, your light. And we give thanks, not because the path was easy, but because the path is over. Not because we deserve it, but because we were never separate. Not because of what we have done, but because of what we are. We are like you. And now we know it. Amen.